The state's decision to move some juvenile offenders to Angola has sparked fierce controversy, even from the federal judge who allowed the transfer.
Well, juvenile justice advocates, they say that they highlight some serious dark secrets about the Louisiana prison system, saying teenagers there are often abused and turn suicidal.
Tonight, investigative reporter Mike Perlstein introduces us to one of those inmates whose family says they're concerned for his very survival.
Alonzo Defillo was only 15 years old when he was charged with 9 counts of armed robbery stemming from a 6-day crime spree that started on Memorial Day, May 28th to June 2nd in 2016. And Defillo committed these crimes while he had on an ankle monitor due to a prior conviction for burglary, criminal trespassing, aggravated assault with a firearm, simple battery, and carrying a concealed weapon. Defillo committed these crimes with a toy gun.
Alonzo Defillo Jr. was known as Peewee by his family because he shares his father's name.
The name Peewee does a really good job of describing him physically. He was tiny.
Peewee was the oldest child in a loving family, but in his early teens, hardship struck with a vengeance. When he was 14, he found his grandmother dead at their home. Peewee was already diagnosed with mental health problems, and when he turned 15, darkness descended again.
He found his mother dead as well in the bathtub, only to find later that his father now was in dire need of a liver transplant.
The oldest of 4 siblings, Peewee did not handle the situation well.
As an adult, that would be very hard and difficult to process. So could you imagine how traumatizing that was for a 14-year-old child?
It's painful to talk about, you know? But anyway, he lost it, he cut up.
Peewee started getting into fights at school. Then he began breaking into cars. Later, he found himself in the juvenile justice system after getting caught in a stolen car. His family says he borrowed the car, not knowing it was stolen.
Come on, Alonzo. You and I both know better than that.
Just from one thing to the next, and it was all petty stuff, you know.
But it was enough for a juvenile judge to put Peewee on an ankle bracelet, a move that his family welcomed, especially his 3 uncles, who were all career New Orleans police officers, including his uncle Marlon, who once served as deputy chief.
He was this goofy kid with this huge smile and, a family that supported him so much.
And he kind of settled down. He did well in school. He went back to school. He did very well. That day he left, he hasn't been home since.
Peewee and 3 other juveniles were accused in a string of carjackings and robberies in New Orleans and Jefferson Parish. Prosecutors decided to try all the kids as adults. Peewee was 15. One police report listed him as 5 feet 2 inches tall, 113 pounds.
Now, please don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to justify his actions or take up for Alonzo. However, in his case, the weapon he used was actually a toy gun. And based on his actions, I would have put him in a rehab or any facility that could help him deal with his underlying issues. In this case, I don't think he was a candidate for Angola. If you're from Louisiana, you would understand how it goes down there. If you know, you know.
Juvenile justice advocates say that once kids are prosecuted as adults, families find themselves powerless. Rehabilitative services fall off a cliff.
He's not getting the mental health resources that he needs. He's not getting the education that he needs to be rehabilitated.
Once you get into that system, it doesn't really care who you are. You are in the twilight zone.
With his father given months to live as he waited for a transplant, Peewee quickly accepted the same global plea deal as the other defendants, 20 years in prison.
Indicated that he really didn't understand what he was pleading guilty to.
Now, Marlon, how could you guys allow this to go down? You come from a family line of officers. How could you allow this to happen? Your family has a very strong presence in the city, so this is very surprising.
It was a plastic toy gun that the boy had.
No one was injured, that the weapon involved was not a real gun, and that the cars were taken, and typically for joyriding.
As soon as the juveniles were sent to Dixon Correctional Center, Peewee's situation was precarious. Coming from a family of cops, he became the target of other inmates.
Alonzo Jr. has been beaten, he's been stabbed, he has been pepper sprayed.
After Alonzo Sr. got a liver transplant in 2018, he visited his son as much as possible. He was shocked by what he saw.
Beat him so bad he lost hearing in this ear. I think, no, the left ear. And when I went to see him, his face was all swollen.
But then when you put a vulnerable child or someone dealing with mental health issues in that environment, it's a form of torture.
At 5 a.m. One morning, when Alonzo Jr. turned 18, he was on a bus headed to Angola.
The Louisiana State Penitentiary at Angola, a plantation turned into a sprawling prison farm, has largely shed its label as the nation's bloodiest prison. But it remains a grim place, with more than 70% of the inmates doing life. Yet somehow, while only serving 20 years, Peewee was sent there. Corrections officials told the family it would be easier to protect him.
Wait a minute, hold up. I'm sorry, but you just said that Alonzo was sent to Angola for safety reasons? Please tell me one thing about Angola that's safe. And go ahead. I'm listening. I'll wait. Alonzo's family was big on the fight against drug and crime in New Orleans, and to be honest, Marlon may be responsible for many inmates being in jail in the first place. So sending Alonzo there with inmates knowing who his family was a big mistake.
Sherry Deach, a juvenile public defender who once represented Peewee, was surprised by a call from him.
He had been pepper sprayed in his cell, and the guards were not allowing him out to even wash the pepper spray out of his eyes.
We reached out to state prison officials, but we have not heard back.
And are you surprised? That's just how Angola is. They're not trying to call you back, and they definitely don't want to hear nothing that you have to say.
We want to ask specifically about one recent stretch in his stay at Angola. Someone who went to prison as a 15-year-old serving a 20-year sentence ended up on Angola's death row. How does that strike you?
It's appalling. It's infuriating. I mean, again, no child should end up in an adult system, let alone death row.
Oh, and I called up there and said, why is my child on death row? Oh, we gotta find somewhere to put him.
I'm sorry. I thought I heard you say something, but I know that couldn't be right.
Peewee is off death row now. He is still locked up most of the time in solitary confinement, but some phone privileges have been restored. During these calls, his family tries to sound optimistic.
There are times when I can hear that he's lost hope, and that most recently he said, I don't think I'll ever get out of here.
He's fighting for his life. You know, I think it's terrible. Every time I call somebody, they done notified one of the guards, and they go after him about me calling up there. And they got to the point where he was like, Dad, don't call up here no more.
The family says they feel paralyzed about what to do next. So they reached out to Channel 4 and enlisted legal help from civil rights attorney Caroline Gabriel. She does most of the calling now.
A lot of communication with the prison. It's difficult to make any real change because, we do get a lot of pushback. This case is a terrible example of how bad it can go when we treat children like adults.
Now let's be clear, by no means am I trying to condone Alonzo's actions and justify what he did. Because what he did was wrong, even though it was with a toy gun. His actions were wrong, and yes, he should have been held accountable for those actions. However, in this situation, I just feel like the whole case was handled incorrectly. Now, at the age of 14, Alonzo walks in and finds his grandmother deceased. And after that event, he does experience mental issues, and the family does take him to get treatment, which is rightfully so. But he turns around and less than 1 year later walks in and finds his mother deceased in a bathtub. Could you imagine how traumatizing that was? After the first event with his grandmother, to only walk in and find his mother in the same situation. I mean, I couldn't even imagine how I would have processed that as an adult, let alone as a child. And then to turn right back around in less than a couple of months, your dad is given a prognosis of less than a year to live due to liver cancer if he does not receive a liver transplant. I mean, for me, like I said, I'm not trying to justify anything that Alonzo did, but that's enough to throw anybody else over the edge. I'm just saying. So what are your thoughts and opinions regarding this situation? How do you feel? I'm really curious to know. So please leave your thoughts and opinions below in the comments. Please remember to be respectable to everyone. Everyone is entitled to have their own thoughts and opinions, so please keep that in mind. And also, love on your family while they're here. Let them know how much they mean to you. Because, I mean, they're here today and they can be gone by the end of the day. They're here today and they can be gone by tomorrow. You just never know. So just love on everyone that loves you while they're here. Until next time.